whisper everywhere you travel in Italy, where modern worlds have been built upon the ancient again and again for all recorded time. And what the past seems to whisper is that greatness, power, wealth, these are vanities, finally mocked by the passage of time. Living in a place where the past weighs so heavily on the present and the future is never certain, perhaps this state of mind explains why sometimes even their celebrations can be just a bit macabre. No one understood the curious interplay of life and death better than Giovanni Boccaccio, whose modest 14th century home is still standing. The richest, most luxurious villa in antiquity once stood right here. Designed entirely by the Emperor Hadrian himself, who had a passion for architecture as well as for conquest, Hadrian's villa, just outside of Rome, is a wonder to behold. Hadrian, ruler in the 2nd century AD, still the golden age of Rome, actually visited every colony of the vast Roman Empire, and his designs here reflected elements of the great, diverse world he had seen. Hadrian never really derived the pleasure he intended from the Villa Adriana. He was dead soon after its completion. It was, however, according to all historical reports, the most remarkable site of a remarkable time. Surprising artifacts from past glories, Etruscan, Greek, and Roman, always remind Italians, still, that Italia has often been touched by greatness. The great skill of Italian artists has always been wedded to the desire for, no, the overwhelming need to create beauty. In Italy, beauty is paramount. It is life itself. For why should anybody live in a world that is not beautifully made? There is great cultural continuity in this land. The skills, the crafts, the spirit of all those who have gone before are now part of the modern heritage. And so these skillful hands now contain all the secrets of an earlier time. There's an old saying here, what the hands fashion well, the heart will always embrace. Italians have been especially attracted to the art of sculpture. Perhaps it is the sense of permanence that is so comforting. And so her grace and beauty will be forever frozen in time. Ah, che bella! They proudly display their sculpture publicly. It says, "We have been here once and hope very much to be remembered." Just 3 miles from Hadrian's villa is Tivoli, with its impressive fountains and splendid gardens, a required stop on any tour of the environs of Rome. Roman emperors and Renaissance princes alike took their holidays here. Each in his turn had statuaries built, and each enlarged and beautified the famed Tivoli Gardens. In the 16th century, the aristocratic Este family transformed a former Benedictine convent into a villa that became and remains one of the most elaborately decorated in all of Italy. Perhaps the most remarkable event in the history of Tivoli occurred when a Sibyl dared to tell the Emperor Augustus of the inevitable coming of Jesus Christ. It was 4 centuries before Christ was born. Less than 2 centuries after Christians were being slaughtered in the Roman Colosseum, Emperor Constantine himself became a Christian. Slowly then, an entirely new land with an exciting new vision began to take root in the old soil. Each summer, the cool, refreshing heights of the Val d'Aosta Alps welcome a special guest. Thousands of Roman Catholics assemble to see the Bishop of Rome, who is the latest successor in a papal line stretching back to St. Peter himself. Italians are passionate about their spiritual life, passionate about their history, and very passionate about this land that has nourished them since before memory began. So how, in God's name, can they be anything other than who they have always been? It is the small, intimate Italy within the larger Italy that each Italian loves best. Their own Italy, what they call Italia dove cammini, the Italy you walk around in. Each region takes a special pride in itself. In Sicilia, they say sternly, if you cannot love this island unto which you were born, you probably will not love your own children either. Harsh words, perhaps, and it may be difficult to understand the logic, but all Sicilians will understand the sentiment. Umbrians, for their part, are familiar with this expression. If you cannot love this countryside, there is probably no love in you at all. In the region of Marche, the people's pride of place is only slightly more forgiving. Here the expression goes, "The land cannot belong to you if you will not first belong to the land." In the Dolomites and Alps of the north, the general sentiment about their land runs as follows. Our terrain may be harsh, but its soul runs deep, so you must try to match it with your own. Fortunately, there are so many different Italies available to us, it's not very difficult to find one to fall in love with. Who cannot help but love the beauty of his native land? Love of it comes with your very first breath and your mother's milk. Of course, we do not choose where in the world we are born, but it does seem especially easy for almost everyone to love Italia. Which brings us to this age-old question. Do people actually create a country, or does the sense of country really shape its people? It's most likely both things happening at once. A beautiful country is undoubtedly a gift which people receive. What the people do with that gift, however, can make all the difference. Land, and more importantly, the history of the land infuses Italians with their unique character, one that may vary from region to region, but also has the common cultural thread that somehow miraculously makes everyone, men and women, old and young, Neapolitan, Genovese, Calabrese, or Siciliano, that makes everyone essentially Italian. Each day in Italy is a seemingly improvised drama set to music, an Italian opera. No surprise, then, that our most famous national art form is a true reflection of how daily life is really lived. In Italian history, as in opera, tragedy and triumph are wedded. So the country's past has been marked by extremes, at times quite peaceful, at other times very violent. Here, the quest for power has claimed countless lives over the centuries. Such has been the tragic history of almost every nation. But Italy's chaotic history is simply longer than most. The Square of 1000, Il Quadro dei Mille, remains a patriotic monument in modern Genoa. At this very site, in 1860, a daring military expedition with the goal of unifying Italy left this home port. Italy before then was just a collection of dispersed regions dominated by foreign royalty. Unification, Risorgimento, was the dream and life ambition of Giuseppe Garibaldi. Leading Un Mille, his 1,000 red-shirted volunteers, Garibaldi landed at the port of Marsala in Sicily, where he gathered even more volunteers and swept eastward across the island to face the powerful army of the Bourbon French. The decisive battle was here in Calatafine. After the Red Shirt victory, it was onward to the mainland and a series of military successes that brought Garibaldi and the independence movement to the brink of its ultimate goal: the creation of a new nation-state, modern Italy. In more recent times, during World War II, on this very beach, on a January night in 1944, almost 40,000 U.S. and Allied troops came ashore in an amphibious assault. In the ensuing Battle of Anzio, Allied casualties were extremely high. In the bitterest of ironies, some of the U.S. casualties were of Italian heritage, sons of the millions of families that had left the impoverished Mezzogiorno at the turn of the century. A great deal of Italian-American blood was spilled on Italian soil. Beneath the steps of the military chapel monument in Retipuglia are the remains of the dead of all wars. The fallen here remind us of sacrifice, of course, but also of the hope, eventually, for an end to the terrible waste of so much human potential. With the passage of time on this timeless peninsula, what have these people not seen? What have they not experienced?